Hey there, fight fans! Get ready to have your minds blown by an incredible highlight reel featuring one of the greatest MMA fighters of all time, Anderson Silva. This Brazilian powerhouse possessed strikes that could shatter dreams in the blink of an eye, and his submissions were so smooth they would make even a seasoned samurai blush with admiration. Prepare to be swept off your feet as we delve into Spider's awe-inspiring climb up the ranks, effortlessly snatching his opponents out of thin air with lightning-fast hands and grappling them into submission like a character straight out of Mortal Kombat. So buckle up, folks, because the exhilaration inside that octagon is about to reach unprecedented levels. The Spider enters the octagon. Man, when Silva first entered the UFC scene, dude was a straight-up force of nature. Here I was just minding my own business one Saturday night, throwing back some beers and settling in for the boys to scrap. Then this lanky dude from Brazil steps in the cage, and from the get-go I knew we were witnessing something special. He moved like a damn spider, bouncing around the outside of the cage, in and out of range with these fluid, almost ballet-like movements. Had me leaning forward in my seat like, what in tarnation is this fool doing? Then bam, out of nowhere he tagged the other guy, fast as a cobra strike, with shots so clean you'd think they were choreographed. And the poor sap on the receiving end. Well, 9 times out of 10, they were waking up to the lights before Herb even finished his count. By the time Anderson wrapped up fight number 6 in the UFC, dude had established himself as the real deal. Wasn't a soul in the sport what could touch this guy. The way he toyed with fools, taunting them from across the cage, but always staying just out of reach, it was like watching a lethal dance. You just knew this Spider had woven himself a web right in the heart of the octagon, and any fly dumb enough to step in was gonna find themselves tangled up for good. From that first fight to the last, it was must-see TV anytime Silva entered the cage. Dude single-handedly got my buddies and me hooked on MMA for life. So anytime someone asks me about the greats, best believe the Spider's name is always one of the first out of my mouth. Guy was simply on another planet when he was in his prime. A true pioneer of the sport. The UFC has never seen anything quite like Anderson Silva before or since. Precision strikes. Gotta give props to Silva's hands, man were they fast. Like a pair of striking vipers, he'd whip those mitts and put opponents to sleep before they knew what hit him. The way he'd measure distance, feint, then out of nowhere land a shot so flush it looks planned. He was a sniper in there, and the accuracy. Like he was playing whack-a-mole, tapping heads left and right. It's like the Spider saw the whole matrix, he was that precise. No wonder so many guys crumpled under the power and precision of his strikes. The way he could change levels with those hands of his was a thing of beauty. Jabbing to the body 1 second, then whipping an overhand to the dome the next. All so fluid and fast it'd make your head spin. And don't even get me started on those kicks of his. Whether it was a question mark to the mug or a good old high kick to put someone to sleep, the man was as deadly above the waist as he was below it. But the thing that really stood out to me was how he never telegraphed anything. Dude had an inner matrix where he could see every angle and calculate the perfect time to land that shot. It all looked so effortless with him, like he was just playing with his food out there. When Anderson was in his prime throwing hands, it was truly a sight to behold. No wonder so many found themselves taking the nap after tangling with those things. The art of submission. But it wasn't all about hands for Silva, he was multi-dimensional in there. This man was slick on the mat too, like an octopus slipping out of a fisherman's grasp. He had a way of luring opponents into his web where he could then twist them into pretzels. 1 minute they had him wrapped up in his guard, thinking they were safe. But the next, Silva would spin like a top, switching positions and cranking on submissions so smooth it looked choreographed. I remember watching him snatch dudes into triangles from the strangest angles, like he had rubber bones the way he could contort his body. Or he'd slyly work for the armbar, slowly applying pressure until there was an audible pop and his opponent was left grimacing in the hold. Jiu-jitsu was this man's art form, and it was awe-inspiring to witness. What always stood out to me was how fluidly he moved between techniques, never staying in one place for too long. 1 second he had you in an omoplata. The next a Darce choke was being cinched in tight from some impossible position. It was a thing of beauty to watch this man flow between submissions, but a nightmare for whoever found themselves tangled in his web. No one could hold a candle to Silva's grappling skills back in the day. From any position, he was always a threat to finish the fight. The way this man integrated his striking and grappling was truly ahead of his time. He made becoming a multi-dimensional champion look effortless. There will never be another fighter quite like Anderson Silva who could dominate on the feet and on the mat with such lethal precision and fluidity. A true artist of the sport. Spider sense. To really grasp Silva's greatness, you had to witness his defensive mastery firsthand. This man had a sixth sense in the cage. It was unreal. Shots that would lay out any other fighter just bounced off in like nothing. He moved with such fluidity, always a half step ahead. I'll never forget watching Anderson weave and slip shots like water flowing around rocks in a stream. He'd tilt his head this way and that, always bopping and slipping with such ease, like he knew your intentions before you even threw. Nothing ever seemed to land clean on him. The way he'd taunt opponents, daring them to hit him while his hands were down. But they never could land anything of consequence because Silva was just too slick. You had to see it to believe it. Here was a man voluntarily making himself a target, yet taking minimal damage thanks to how slick his movement was. When others would have been knocked clean out, Anderson just kept on ticking. He truly had a gift for being in the right place at the right time. Self-preservation through precision and poise. That was the Spider's greatest strength. The immortal knockouts. Man, when Silva switched to offense, you better watch out. This guy brought the pain like nobody else. The way he'd line guys up in the crosshairs and then send them off to the shadow realm was a pure work of art. Like a sniper taking his shots, Anderson was just so precise yet brutal. I'll never forget that one knockout against Rich Franklin. A picture-perfect 1-2 that the ref didn't even bother counting for. And don't get me started on that highlight reel front kick he landed clean on Vitor's chin. Just thinking about it gives me chills. When Anderson stepped into the cage, you could feel the energy change. This man was the bougie man, and you just knew it was only a matter of when, not if, he'd end your night in highlight reel fashion. Those caws of his are some of the coldest, most clinical finishes you'll ever see. No wonder guys were shaking in their boots at the thought of fighting him. The way Silva could toy with dudes for minutes, playing with his food, before suddenly switching on the afterburners and snuffing out their lights was truly a sight to behold. Those highlights will without a doubt go down as some of the greatest knockouts in MMA history. The Spider was simply on another level when he was in his prime. Legendary battles Silva versus elite fighters. But it wasn't just newcomers or lesser fighters that Silva dominated in the octagon. Not by a long shot. This man actively sought out the very best in the business, time and time again. He took on all the top dogs during his reign at the top, names like Rich Franklin, who he defeated not once but twice. Then there was Dan Henderson, one of the toughest dudes to ever compete, and Silva made him look like an amateur. And how can we forget about Forrest Griffin, a former light heavyweight champ, who Silva demolished in under 3 minutes. Even Vitor Belfort, considered one of the most dangerous knockout artists ever, was no match for the Spider. Silva fought all these elite-level competitors in their primes too, guys who were champs themselves in other organizations. But in almost every battle, Anderson found a way to get his hand raised, whether via highlight reel knockout or technical knockout, or by showcasing his world-class Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It was truly awe-inspiring to watch him systematically dismantle one top fighter after the next, even making these men who were considered the best at the time look like they didn't belong in the same cage as him. You really got the sense that on any given night, no matter the opponent, Silva was operating on a whole different level than anyone brave enough or foolish enough to stand across from him inside the UFC octagon. A true MMA bougie man for the ages if there ever was one. Silva's most memorable victories. No competitor deserves diminishment, for each battled bravely following their path. Belfort, possessed of lightning hands, cave all despite fatigue against Silva's mastery. Griffin's relentless march pressed Silva until the latter unveiled another facet of his genius. Even Bonnar, though briefly in the storm, weathered its fury with courage. While finishes were inevitable against Silva, none took the easy road. Each man fought not simply for victory, but to define themselves through trial by combat against a peerless talent. We must honor their courage, for where others saw only results, they experienced hard-fought moments, triumphs and growth through overcoming adversity against a peer who helped elevate them and the sport. Silva was predator and prey, pushing limits as his rivals pushed his. Through such challenges, we see the best in competitors' hearts and techniques alike. Let us celebrate that not just finishes, but the fullness of their journeys. Hard-fought lessons through which they bettered themselves and left traces of greatness that still inspire. In this light, all involved emerge victors. Well, folks, hope y'all enjoyed the ride through Spider's career highlights as much as I did. Dude was a straight-up killer in his prime, levels above the competition. If you liked what you saw here today, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to catch all our future MMA goodness. Also, feel free to share this with any friends you think would appreciate watching the GO8 do his thing. Keep on rocking in the cage and outside of it, you awesome fight fans. Thanks for watching.